Welcome to another episode of How to ABX. Today is Blast Mail Burn Day. It is 8/28/2023. So really quick, I'll talk about this rotation and who I'm using, and then I'll show you an example of that, and I'll give you additional information afterwards. So I'm going to be using Magneto today, which I jokingly call Spamneto with a Rage. Pretty much you want to delay cancel your 5 until the bubble appears. Everything else can be instantly cancelable, including his 6, and you use the 7 as soon as it's available. There's no real order, you just spam your skills. 2 and 1, letting them have an extra second or so before you cancel them can add a little bit, but that gets tricky, so I usually try to just focus on canceling as soon as possible, maybe adding in a couple auto attacks. So right away I'm going to do a 5, then I'm going to do a 4, 3, 2, 1, just to give that extra couple seconds on 2 and 1, using that co-op skill. There's 1, 2. Like, as soon as they're on cooldown, just use them. You see that 7? Use it. Don't wait. Just use them. And like I said, if you want to do the auto attack in between, you can, but it's more important to focus on your skills. If you see the skill about to hit 1, you want to tap that right away. He does have the ability to cancel today, so paying attention to when the beast roars is important. You can cancel with your 4, 3, and 6. You'll see that little thumb up. That is an indication that you can cancel the beast roar. So you don't necessarily need to have a specific striker in order to cancel, since you have skills that can cancel. These are the best types of characters to use for ABX, in my opinion, especially if they score super high, if they do both. So right around 209, he's going to do his roar, so you want to make sure you have at least one of your skills ready, which is why I'm saving that 4. As soon as he faces you, you can pop that skill for Magneto, and he'll get that cancel off. The next roar can usually be between 113 and 126. For today, it's actually going to be right around 126. So that's the next mark you want to look for. The first roar is always around 209 unless you delay it or stun him and then he roars late. The last roar is around 38 seconds left, so just keep that in mind when you're doing your rotations and you're trying to save your skills. So we still have some time here. Paying attention to how long the skills take to cool down, I'm fine with popping my 4 and 3 there. Alright, I am going to save my 3 this time. He should be roaring any time now, so he should be jumping to the center. Oh, he was untargetable there. As soon as he faces me, I can pop my skills. So, there we go. And you'll see that it does the cancel. So there's that burn damage. You see that little burn icon. Because on burn season, you do burn damage, and it will cancel that roar. Okay. Nice little tip is if you go into skill preview, you can actually pop your skills that do those burn damage and see when the icon appears at the top of the screen, and that'll give you an indication of how much time you need for your skills to actually do the cancel. Kind of a neat little tip there. If you're an experienced player, you probably know all this. Maybe you're just watching the video just to see how other people play today. Alright, we're close to 38, so I'm not going to save the 4 because the 3 will be ready in time. So he should be jumping center here any second, so I am going to save the 5. There he goes. He does the hop. As soon as he faces you, pop that 3 right away, and we're in good shape. And I actually launched off all my cancel skills, so again, we're in good shape there. With spam characters, it can kind of be frustrating because your score can vary greatly. You'll see I did a run earlier. I accidentally forgot to turn on my microphone, so I had to re-record this video. But yeah, I might not necessarily hit that same score or break it. I actually might do a little bit less. I am going to get close. Let's see if we can actually break it or not. Oh, saved my 5 for some reason, not paying attention. I was looking at the score at the top of the screen. So you will see variances, especially with characters who spam. Keep that in mind, and that's fine. I like to write down my scores so that I can see how well I'm doing. So I'm going to write down the highest score for today, which is what counts. 14362231, which is not too terrible. You know, 14.3 million is okay for today. If you're not scoring this much or you're scoring more, it's all based around builds. So let's talk about some of that and talk about some alternatives for today. Alright, so the most important thing to keep in mind is cards and X swords play a huge factor. So let's just show what I have right now. I am sitting at 16% Pierce here. You want to make sure your ignore defense and your skill cooldown is capped on all characters regardless of what mode you're playing. But after that, your attack doesn't cap, so getting as much energy and all attack as possible on your cards is usually advisable. I mean, there are other stats you want to keep in mind. Your attack speed, crit rate, and crit damage are all important things to keep in mind. So that's what I'm working with here. I also have, like I said, X swords. X swords will play a factor. I've got videos on how to work with these, but those are my stats on my X swords. Let's talk about my build for Magneto really quick. Magneto does have what is required if you're going to use him today, which is the Krakoan Winter. It is a seasonal uniform, so if you missed out on it, you have to wait till the season comes around. He is not worth using in ABX, in my opinion, with any of the other uniforms. I do have a Mighty Rage that I'm running on him, and I do have the options rolled up to a 0.9%. I don't have his custom artifact. I do have a Destruction, though. It's an instinct match, and if you're using tier 4 characters, instinct matching is very important, unless it's their custom artifact that gives them a good boost. ISO 8 said I'm running Poa. Any of the attack sets are pretty much meta right now, in my opinion. So Poa, Overdrive, and Hawkeyes. I pretty much usually go with what I roll first between Poa and Overdrive. I have pretty good cooldown on my cards and swords, so I don't really feel like I need Hawkeyes on most of my characters. As always, make sure all the ISO 8s that you have here are 6 stars and all red to get the maximum bonus for that set. I've got rank up. You can get as high as you want for the type enhancement here. Skills, I always max out. Not that you have to. Some people recommend having them one level below max is okay. I like to just max them out. Striker-wise, typically you try to match up the Striker with their instinct types, but Black Widow, especially if she's a tier 4 and built, tends to be a really good Striker for today. Now, I was using her for ABX previously until I built a new speed character. So I actually have her with a CTP of Rage and a tier 4, and that does play a factor how your Striker is built on how much damage you do. But if you can use Black Widow pretty much as a Striker for any of your tier 4s for ABX, you're usually in good shape. There are other things to consider, like if you can't cancel, making sure you have a Striker who can. But for the most part, if you're able to cancel, I would recommend using Black Widow as your Striker if she is built. So for the equipment and stuff like this, I have everything amplified. I have some Odin's Blessings on them. As you can see, I have them pretty well built. Magneto is one of my 3 favorite characters: Doctor Strange, Shang-Chi, and Magneto, and all of Marvel. Information over here. Let me go ahead and show you what his stats look like. As you can see, I'm focusing on what I consider to be the most important stats, and they're all capped: attack speed, crit rate, crit damage, ignore defense, dodge, and reduce cooldown. So reduce cooldown duration. Movement speed is not bad to have. I kind of have it in there, and I'm barely there. Dodge and crit are very important if you have a rage. Those are what actually bump up your score, so those absolutely need to be capped. The energy, of course, doesn't cap, so 98,000 is where I'm sitting at right now. All of this factors in and plays a factor into how well your character does in different game modes, especially ABX and ABL. All right, I'll go ahead and show you the instinct too, in case you're curious. If you're interested, as far as uniform goes, it is a mythic uniform. These are the uniform options if you've not seen them: Blue Marvel Classic, Iron Man Back to Basics, Jean Grey X-Men Red, Hawkeye Marvel Studios Hawkeye Hero Suit, and Jessica Jones Jewel. Now let's talk about the team up I have, why I'm choosing that team for ABX, and then alternatives you can do in case you don't have Magneto, or if there's actually a character who, according to a lot of veteran players, does better than Magneto. And I'll tell you why I'm actually not using him. So let's go here into challenging my record. So Magneto's leadership is important to use for himself with a double support. He gives himself the all basic attacks increased by plus 50%. I consider this to be the best team up for Magneto. I have Mysterio and I have Cyclops. Now Cyclops does not need his villain uniform here, the Phoenix 5 one, because he is a blast male, so he can still be used on this team up. So I've got Cyclops' modern uniform, which is probably his best uniform in my opinion because of the stats that he gets for his support abilities, and Mysterio's new Summer Mystery uniform, which again, this is a seasonal uniform, is a phenomenal uniform, and actually I consider him to be the one that's worthy of Insight. I used to have it on Cyclops and I pulled it off and I gave it to Mysterio. Insight is important to have on your characters, especially with ABX or ABL. As far as anything else with the characters, you don't really need to worry about them, but what makes these so important to have? So for example, in here, Mysterio, for all supervillains, he gives increase all basic attacks by 30%, and what I consider to be one of the best PvE support skills in the game, increase basic damage dealt to boss types by 40%. And that is a uniform effect just by having this uniform. It does not need to be mythic. Just having the uniform alone will give this bump to the team, specifically to supervillains, which does apply to Magneto. So yeah, keep that in mind when you're trying to pick out uniforms and you're trying to pick out support. Damage dealt is better because, well, I've got videos on it, but in a high level, all attack is damage dealt, but that can still be blocked. Damage dealt is what actually got through and was not blocked. So you're boosting what is actually done versus what's done prior to different defenses and resistances. All right, so we talked about that, custom gear. Let's talk about Cyclops here. Cyclops does work as a leader too, but because Magneto has his own leadership, it is better to double support. So let's look at the passive skills. That's a self-passive. This is the one I'm looking for. So all allies get 40% increase of energy attack. That's pretty much all he's doing. I'm fairly certain, and I will double check because, you know, everyone makes mistakes. Yeah, so this is a self thing. So there's no uniform effect that he's giving. So literally Cyclops is just there for that energy boost. But double support, good stuff. All right. Now, there are other things to consider as far as team build goes. So it is possible to use Iron Man back to basics. He's pretty decent, especially if you have him at tier 4. I see a lot of people recommending Star-Lord. Star-Lord tier 4 seems to be the meta for today. I do not have a tier 4 Star-Lord. I like Magneto. I built him. I only have a tier 3 Star-Lord who's not really built at all. Doesn't have anything worth using wise. So, yeah, I don't think he's going to outscore my Magneto. But if you do have him tier 4, apparently he does. Other people to consider would be like Mephisto. I don't know if I would consider anyone else. There is a possibility when Cable gets his uniform and Strife gets his uniform. I believe they're getting them tomorrow. Both of them might be possible meta for today. So it is very possible and most likely that Cable is going to replace the meta and might be the one usable for today. Professor X does pretty good. If you build Professor X, he does do pretty good. And apparently there is some reasonable damage from Malekith, but not enough to really speak of. I don't know if I would use anyone else besides for Malekith or Professor X, Iron Man, and of course Magneto would be the next top one. I don't know where Mephisto would lie in that. Mephisto would probably be underneath Iron Man. And then, of course, like I said, Star-Lord, if he's built, is going to be the top one. So that's what I've got going on there. As always, you know, the meta is constantly changing. This is just the way that I play them and the rotation that I use. So hopefully you found this useful. If you did, consider thumb-upping and leaving comments. It helps the algorithm. And may your ABX score be as high as possible. Thanks for watching.